I never thought we'd see such a potential, I suppose, perceived destruction of value more than Twitter than we were witnessing with OpenAI. This was even another level, but I think we've seen the decision reversed. ChatGPT, or rather OpenAI, is a tool that 100 million people use in their job and in their school and at home. And, this is something that isn't just a pedestrian piece of software. It really has permeated businesses and lives all over the world. So suddenly this was at risk of being pulled from under our feet.
Hi there, and welcome to Stock Club, a podcast brought to you by MyWallSt. I'm Mike, and joining me in today's episode is MyWallSt's chief investor, Emmet. Before we get into the show, I just want to give a quick word to our friends at Vodafone Business who have recently launched their VHub digital advisory service. This is offering Irish businesses of all sizes free one-to-one digital support and advice. You don't even have to be a Vodafone Business customer to avail of the service. So search Vodafone VHub to book a call with one of the VHub digital experts, and we will leave a link in the show notes for today's episode. Emmet, how are you? It's good to see you.
Good to see you, Mike. How are you doing today?
I'm good. We're just coming off the back of our live event, our Horizon members event in Dublin, so I'm still kind of riding that high, which is great. What were your takeaways from the weekend?
There was a few things. I think the first thing is that I really love getting together with like-minded people. Like, no matter what you're into, when you go to a summit or a conference with people who are into the same thing, you realize that you found, or at least found in part, your tribe. And I love that. Other takeaways, as you know, Mike, we, the speakers, intentionally avoided comparing any notes prior to the event just to ensure that our opinions were not influenced by any group consensus. And I was really intrigued to hear Bill Mann say that this is the most severe small cap bear market ever. And if you're there, you probably voted in a poll run by Bill by clapping. And interestingly, he concurred, in my opinion, that a small cap rally is on the horizon. And that's something I'll touch on again in Horizon, because I really think there's some amazing opportunities there. What else would I take from it? I suppose I was excited for us to do it again next year, bigger and hopefully better and hopefully even more engaging. I also learned an old human habit, an unavoidable human habit, which is when you pay cash for a ticket, you turn up. But if you don't pay cash for a ticket, you'll take it or leave it. And we actually would have had twice the number of people in the room if everyone who said they were coming actually came, which is actually a small miracle they didn't, because the room was packed.
But anyway, wouldn't fit, would they?
What were your takes from it, Mike?
I love this. I think, was it yourself or Bill who said that there's only 7% of Irish adults were investors, and that kind of hit home when we talk about bringing those people together, because I don't think there's a lot of those kind of events happening in Ireland. So that's what I really liked about it, to see that there was that kind of communal effort there, and maybe it should be expanded upon more. It was great. And then I had a bunch of people come up to me and be like, geez, you don't look like you sound. So that was a bit different as well. I felt like I was getting in trouble, and everyone come up to me and be like, I recognize your voice. But
well, I'm nearly 6'2". I'm nearly 6'2" in height, and I have never been on a stage where I am by far the shortest. Between you, Bill Mann, Chris Hill, and Shane Curran, I was dwarfed by the four of you. I was like the mini me. I really felt like I'd shrunk again.
Yeah, geez, there was a lot of meat up on stage. I'll say that. I just want to say as well, I'm sure there's listeners now who are at it, and just a big thank you as well. It was a brilliant night, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, because we want to do it again more often and bigger and better. So a great success. Okay, so let's get into the show this week, and I'm really glad you took the lead on this topic, because it's shifting under feet as we speak. So we're recording Wednesday morning, and we're going to get into the OpenAI saga, basically. So what's happened in the last 5-6 days with basically the world's most important startup. So Emmet, do you want to give us a quick recap of events now? And we can kind of try to get this under wraps, I suppose. But yeah,
Yeah, heaven knows how the story's going to evolve in the hours between us recording this here on the morning of Wednesday, 22nd November, and it going live on Friday. But anyway, as most people have heard, because really this news has even permeated to the smallest, most regional radio channels in Ireland. But as most people heard, the co-founder and CEO of OpenAI, Sam Altman, was shock fired by the board. Literally, we fired him. And then following that, a host of high-profile resignations in the company were tendered. The CTO, Mira Marathi, was appointed as the interim CEO. There was momentum to reinstate Altman. Then the board reportedly agreed to revise the decision in principle, and negotiations faltered. And then they put in a guy called Emmet, who's the co-founder of the video streaming platform Twitch, which I think is a gaming platform.
Yeah,
Um,
he
he
doesn't
was
know how
in.
to spell his name either.
No, he doesn't. Two T's. What is wrong with those people? Anyway, you've really hit the sore nerve. I don't know, but yeah. So he was put in as the interim CEO, and Altman was apparently going to move to Microsoft, and then apparently about 730 OpenAI employees signed a letter threatening to quit unless the board re-signs Altman and reinstates him. And then when I woke up this morning, the news was he's back in as CEO, and it really is a lesson in trying to deal with things before bringing to the public forum and the court of public appeal. I never thought we'd see such a potential, I suppose, perceived destruction of value more than Twitter than we were witnessing with OpenAI. This was even another level, but I think we've seen the decision reversed.
Yeah, yeah, and I think there's so much that comes into this decision. So why exactly was what were the reasons given for Sam Altman's firing?
It was actually very interesting because I don't ever recall seeing something like this happen before, and there's a specific reason. And it was a piece written in Fortune magazine that said that the Altman implosion, if you will, has proven to be a massive wake-up call about the importance of governance in the tech world, and whether or not the OpenAI board made the right call when it chose to fire Altman. And I think we all have the feeling was the wrong call, and they seem to have admitted it was the wrong call. But it's a case that we couldn't really argue because we weren't given enough information to understand why, in fact, the guy was fired. But anyway, according to Fortune, the company's approach to governance was a demonstrable mess. Like how a generationally important company like OpenAI could be plunged into chaos is down to a unique corporate slash governance model. The company's structure meant that the board of directors had ultimate control to make decisions over both the non-profit and for-profit open AI entities. And it left everyone surprised. It left, like, for example, their anchor investor, Microsoft, blindsided by the guy
I
who
heard
fired him.
Microsoft got told a minute before the meeting.
Yeah,
So basically,
that's
hanging up
insane.
the phone when Sam Altman was walking in
Yeah.
the door, be like, "Yeah, by the way, Satya, we're getting rid of this fella. We'll chat to you on Monday."
Like they put 14 billion in. You think that would, merit a little more respect. Now, apparently its structure was designed to develop AIs in intelligence, if you will, if you were in a safe and kind of beneficial manner for humanity, and it capped the profit arm from OpenAI, which was only introduced in 2019, and its own right was able to issue equity and raise further capital and work with other non-profits that were established in 2015. But there's a few things that were really unusual about the firing. The first thing is that the OpenAI's board job was not designed to protect or represent stakeholders. I mean, that in its own right is enough to say there's dysfunction there. But it was there to prevent an AI apocalypse, which I think most of us at a pedestrian level can say, yeah, we don't want that. We heard AI has a potential threat. So we're glad the board has some power, but a power that vetoes everything else we can see, and it brought with it a degree of malfunction. And that structure means that, unlike most private companies where major investors and VCs sit on the company's board and have, a say on how the company is run. OpenAI's key investors had no power at the board level whatsoever. The second unusual thing was that the board who fired Sam Altman was small and they were inexperienced. This wasn't like a grown up board.
Hmm.
And that kind
Yes,
of runs with the logic.
scientists, a lot of them, wasn't it?
They were scientists, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, the chairman,
which feeds into
yes,
your kind of thought process of, well, we need to prevent apocalypse. We're not returning value to
yeah,
shareholders as our number one target here. We need to
no,
really, I suppose, cultivate a safe application of this world changing technology.
which I have to admire, but the chairperson, Greg Brockman, wasn't even involved in the decision. And as far as I know, that's unheard of in a traditional governance setting. Brockman later announced that he'd be stepping down from the board, and then he quit the company altogether. And at that time had joined Microsoft. I don't know what he's up to this morning because maybe the whole thing is just uh, when in my early days of engineering and coding, there was always a file called .rollback, which was a big file, a software file of the thing before you made changes. And I think they really rolled out the .rollback software. But anyway, the board didn't keep investors abreast of the news. And, although they weren't obliged to consult with OpenAI's major investors, just not getting their buy-in didn't really do them any favors. And as I said, Microsoft put 13 billion into the company, and other investors are the who's who of the investing world. There's Thrive, Khosla Ventures, Tiger Global, Andreessen Horowitz, Sequoia, K2. I mean, it is literally the who's who of that place in Silicon Valley. What's it called? Sandhurst Drive or something like that. So all the big VC firms, they were all in, and they too, I presume, alongside Microsoft, were completely shocked.
Yeah, and I guess, let's talk about the structure for just a second. So basically, OpenAI's ultimate goal is to become a non-profit.
Yeah, that's right.
That's like a very quick summation of it. So I think the structure now is that Microsoft will eventually own 49% of the company,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
then it'll run through until a certain point, and then it eventually becomes not profitable. And I think that's a self-awareness of what they're doing in terms of AI and its applicability in the future, and why it should be almost a public kind of asset rather than being held in the hands of for profit
Mm,
businesses. And that self-awareness of, well, we're really sitting on something huge here is
mm.
probably what fed into this as well. And maybe looking at Sam Altman when he did the famous investor day, and he was showcasing off all the ChatGPT new functions and stuff, and the commercial side of things really spooked people as well. So you can see why, in a sense, that the board members got spooked, especially considering where they're coming from. A lot of them are scientists. They're not there
Mm.
to kind of nurture the business side of things at all. But to do it in the way they did it really, really exposes them, and probably takes a number of steps back in terms of their goal and mission as well. I think a lot of people were saying
Yeah.
this will probably give Sam Altman a lot more power.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
Mm.
what I found almost amusing was that on Friday at a Horizon Live event, I was asked what are my predictions for next year. And I said, well, I think Bing is going to take quite a bit of market share off Google because it is effectively the back end search engine for ChatGPT. And I laid out my thinking for that particular argument. And then the next day I was like, well, there goes OpenAI and there goes its reliance on Bing. And now I'm back in the game. I have some really clangers where I made a prediction that went wrong an hour later, but I thought this was
that that
just a new
was
record
that
breaker.
was a little bit too immediate. Yeah. All right. So what's the fallout of all of this? What's the big deal, and why should me or you or our listeners care about all this?
Well, as of last night, the kind of future of AI was, I wouldn't like to say changed, but very significantly augmented. And for start, ChatGPT, or rather OpenAI, is a tool that 100 million people use in their job and in their school and at home. And, this is something that isn't just a pedestrian piece of software. It really has permeated businesses and lives all over the world. So suddenly this was at risk of being pulled from under our feet. I think more interestingly, though, is that there are there are thousands of businesses out there that have built their proposition and a product and their entire business on the chassis that is OpenAI's infrastructure. And we're seeing all these smaller AI businesses bubbling up everywhere. You can't even surf social media without being hit with some kind of variation of what is OpenAI. Since 2019, Microsoft and OpenAI, which was founded, as we said, as a nonprofit dedicated to artificial intelligence, they've worked together. And Microsoft, I think they invested 1 billion the year it was founded, and then wrote another check in 2021 and upped the ante, and they committed
Mm.
and committed and committed and committed.
And
And what's
Microsoft have
quite
a very unique relationship in that they don't really pay them. They don't really give them money in cash. They just
That's right.
allow them to use the computing
That's
power
right.
from Microsoft Azure, which shows,
Yeah.
I suppose, where the business is at as well. You know, it's almost
Yeah.
like a kind
Yeah.
of symbiotic relationship.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, they're Siamese twins of sorts, and as you said, the Azure data center runs all the stuff that OpenAI has built, and it's analogous, I think, to saying, "Here, son, here's 50 euro pocket money. Oh, by the way, this week's rent is 50 euros."
that's a good that's a good one too. All right, yeah,
Yeah, but the crux is that Microsoft is working on its own in-house large language model, and this is where my understanding of who ultimately owns the code base in a world where AI, or sorry, I mean to say ChatGPT and OpenAI disassembles, like who owns that intellectual property? Microsoft have their own in-house team. The thinking as of last night was that if everyone at OpenAI jumps ship and heads to Microsoft, they're going to abandon the world's largest language model. So
yeah,
that doesn't make any sense. And building a new one from scratch at Microsoft, which I wouldn't say is quite from scratch, it's slow and it's expensive. And you can see why this and was and still is a very strategically important part of Microsoft's future potential.
yeah.
So I think
Just
it
on
was.
that, I think what it also exposed is maybe there's less of a moat in AI than we might think. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm, mm,
when we were hearing that the CEO and a couple of people, not a couple of people, there was a lot of people might leave from OpenAI to Microsoft. We're like, all right, well, that's OpenAI done, and that's Microsoft,
mm,
as the forefront now. And I know that
that's
the
right.
companies are so close, and it's tough to say moving from OpenAI to Microsoft, but in thinking along those lines, what if Google tomorrow gave Sam Altman an offer he couldn't refuse, and now Sam Altman's working for Google and
Mm,
DeepMind? What happens
yeah,
then? Is Google automatically now the leader of the AI revolution? So I think in
yeah,
terms of AI and zooming out, I think I'm going to touch on this later in the show a bit as well, is that AI, in my opinion, will become a technology that is shared and used by those with the deepest resources. And
yeah. That's right.
with that in
Yeah.
mind, I don't think it's going to be any one company leading it. I think it'll be the largest tech companies that can all avail of it the most. You know what I mean? And there'll be obviously more intuitive and better applications of it from different players. But in general, I don't think it'll be a huge cause for disruption because I think the access to it will be somewhat universal.
Mm. Bill Mann made a very interesting point, you'll recall, on Friday, where he said anything that's code based has a threat of new entrants that we don't even know about because there's a bunch of kind of open toed sandal geeks sitting in a garage working on something. Whereas he said that there's no bunch of geeks sitting in a garage working on a new Exxon Mobil. Like
Yeah, yeah,
if you can compete with code, you've got competitors you can't even see. And I agree with you. But had Sam Altman walked to the extreme opposite side of the room, like Google, you have to believe he'll accelerate their efforts and hopefully make Bard something usable. But it doesn't mean it's a fast process. But what we do know is that AI is a genuine exponential learning system, and you hear over the years exponential growth, which is hogwash. People clearly don't understand the mathematics of exponential growth, but AI's learning is exponential. So the first couple of years are bit unglamorous. There's not a whole lot of interesting stuff happening, but then it gets better and better and better. But the last few days were a hot mess. But the one thing I would have taken from it was that I would regard Sam Altman as a as my mother would have said, like he's a gentleman. The way he dealt with it, the way he handled himself, the way he spoke was with such dignity and leadership. He said in a tweet that his top priority is to ensure that OpenAI continues to thrive, and he's committed to fully providing continuity of operations. And he just, certainly publicly, the guy was very he exhibited leadership traits that are quite rare and that you wish to find in a business. So certainly from my observation of OpenAI and its leader again as of this morning, I felt, well,
Mm.
that's in good hands. And certainly we don't really know if the evil overlord and cyborgs of AI are going to take us over. But isn't it quite interesting that it was a human decision that actually reversed the damage done? There was a human decision that created potential damage and a human decision that reversed the potential damage on something that ultimately and supremely is there to augment human decisions. I thought that was quite an interesting irony.
Yeah, well, you're clearly not a conspiracy theorist because a lot of people were saying it was the robots taking over the board that got rid of Sam Altman in the first place.
Yeah, they asked ChatGPT, what should we do? Fire the leader immediately.
Get rid of
Don't
the
even
humans.
tell anyone, just do it.
Yeah, yeah. Just before we finish up, lastly on the Sam Altman and the leadership side of things, I think it was something crazy like 600 or 500 out of the 700 employees offered up their resignation in tandem with them. Now,
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
that
that's
says
right.
a lot. It also, I'd say they're all those 505 people or whatever number ended up being are pretty secure in getting jobs anywhere else they
Oh
want in the
yeah,
world. I think
yeah.
Mark Benioff was pimping out his Twitter, offering job offers to anyone from OpenAI. While did you see that? No,
No, I didn't.
he's basically like, there's an open job offer right here, right now, if you want to sign anyone from OpenAI to come over.
Wow,
And then I
wow.
think one of the higher ups in OpenAI said, I don't think the company that brought us Tableau is going to bring in artificial general intelligence anytime soon.
Well, I did. You did see the caliber of Altman's friends as well. Not only his personal integrity, but you saw things like his Brian Chesky and other people from the Y Combinator crew that actually are have built something great, all jumping to his defense, which I thought added credence to his integrity, and I suppose put a spotlight on the naivety, if you like, of a board that just said, "Hey, you're fired," while the chairman was off having a cup of coffee.
Yeah, yeah.
Quick firing while your man isn't looking.
He was on Twitter live reacting. Okay.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Right. Look, Mike, let's move on. So let's look ahead to 2024. And we've a few areas worth covering over the coming weeks. But I'm going to hit you specifically with two easy ish questions, right? So the first one I'd like to hear from you is, what stock or industry are you not worried about at all next year?
Yeah, this one goes against the grain a small bit because obviously people's major concern right now around the market is how top heavy it is. We talked about this at length
Mm,
at the
mm.
Horizon event, where the S&P 7, which was at the Magnificent 7 or the S&P 7, whatever you want to call it, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Tesla, and Nvidia is up. Is it about 105% on
Yeah.
average
Yeah.
this year? The rest of the S&P is up. The S&P 493 is up about 1 or 2%. So
Hmm.
the market's been completely dominated by this very specific cohort of stocks, all within basically the same industry as well. And obviously that's of a major concern because, the market becomes completely dependent on a very small number of businesses. But I'm actually not that concerned. I'm going to discount Nvidia and Tesla here because I, those valuations are out of control. But the other five, the original kind of FANG stocks, we'll say, or I don't know what we'd call them now, but that big tech cohort, I'm actually not that concerned about. I think
Mm.
they're probably five of the greatest businesses we've seen in the last 20 to 30 years. And if you take a quick look at their valuations, apart from Microsoft, which obviously went through all this OpenAI stuff and is in line to inherit 49% of possibly the most exciting and interesting startup in the world, um, the valuations aren't out of control at all. So I think Apple is a bit ahead of its 5-year average, but Google, Amazon, Facebook, they're all right there. I know Amazon, you can't really look at earnings, but its actual cash flow to its actual cash flow valuation is well below its 5-year average. So nothing is stretched there. And if you kind of zoom out and think about what we mentioned about AI and what businesses will probably end up being the biggest beneficiaries, and it's probably the businesses with the deepest resources. You're not going further past that. Add into that the cloud side of things. So Microsoft, Amazon, and Google are the three largest cloud providers. So if you take all that into account and you take in the tailwind that will bring as well, and the need for more computing power and the need for more operational power, it all kind of feeds into these companies that at first glance it looks like a kind of bad spot to be in, but I'd much prefer those five companies to be worth whatever, a collective $10 trillion, than something like Coinbase being worth $20 billion. Do you know what I mean? If we're to
Mm.
rely on those caliber businesses staying where they are and maintaining these levels of valuation and revenue growth and profit growth, I don't think it's in the worst situation, which is pretty good for the overall market because we've seen how
Mm.
dependent it has become. So yeah, I am definitely discounting Tesla and Nvidia. I think Nvidia we'll get into in a bit, but Tesla has just made anyone who's really commented on it look foolish in
Yeah,
recent years.
yeah, and in
But I
even
still don't want
recent
to.
days.
Yeah, I still don't want to back my horse on top of that. But yeah, that's kind of my take. Not like that I'm diving in and buying hand over fist, but the
Yeah,
question was kind of worded of what I'm not worried about, and surprisingly, it is big
mm.
tech. So, what are your
I'd agree
thoughts
with
on
you
that?
there. Well, it's interesting. The median market cap of the Magnificent Seven is about $1.6 trillion. So those seven businesses have a median value of 1.6 trill, whereas the 493 to do the math in my head, but the other 493, their median value is 50 billion. So 1,600 billion median versus 50 billion median for the other 493. And as you know, I've put my vote down that we're on, I wouldn't say the eve of a small cap rally, but small caps have never been so cheap. So I would agree with your sentiment. I think that five of those seven are as safe as you could possibly imagine, possibly
Mm.
all seven, because I wouldn't necessarily agree with you. I can see Tesla are on the back foot at the moment with the repricing of EVs, and also seems to be a mood change in EVs on the whole, and with the Chinese competition coming in from BYD. It's a business that seems to be going through some strategic challenges. But uh, I would actually say, with possible exception of Tesla, definitely agree that the other six are safe. Actually, to be perfectly honest, no, I'd just say I think the seven are safe. To bet against Tesla has never been a great thing, and I wouldn't do it now. So I actually agree with you fully. But my bet would be that we are going to see a small cap rally in the year ahead. What's the catalyst is the question. Well, the catalyst is very simply history per se. It's that there has never been such extreme value in that cohort of quality businesses that have, on the whole, kind of dropped between 50 and 90% in value in the last 2 years, and on the whole improved their businesses over the last 2 years. And historically, that is always a recipe for a bull run in a category. And even when you look at the multiples of small caps versus large caps, or mid caps, indeed, they are way cheaper. But yes, I agree with your point. But if the question was asked of me, I would have said there's going to be a small cap rally.
Yeah. That's not. I
So
mean, it's
listen,
not a
let's
bad
flip it
spot to be in.
around. Flip it around inversely. Are there any stocks that you would keep on a short leash in 2024? What are you cautious about?
Yeah, I have two, and both could make me
Oh,
look very foolish. but I think we should separate stock and business
Mm. Yeah.
when we discuss this now. And the first is Nvidia. So
Oh,
I was very sure to separate Nvidia and Tesla out of my first answer
yeah.
because we just saw Nvidia report yesterday, and we're not going to dive into the numbers, which were outrageous. It's tripling revenue across the
Unreal.
board and like growing like absolute gangbusters. But after all that and that earnings report yesterday, the stock is down pre in pre market trading right now. Do you
Mm.
know what I mean?
Mm.
If
Yeah.
if you were a company and you triple revenue like you did and you delivered a quarter like that, you'd be expecting a 10-20% bump. For the stock to be
Yeah.
down, I think kind of proves my point. And if you're to go after Nvidia now, I think you would be chasing the hype. And as you've
Mm.
seen, especially since COVID and the years after, that hype chasing really doesn't turn out profitable in the end. And
Mm. Mm.
there's more to it as well. I think competition would intensify. Right now, Nvidia is pretty much seen as a pure play, and it
Mm.
owns this. I wouldn't say monopolistic market share, but a dominant market share in the market that is obviously one of the hottest ever right now. I've seen hype like this before, but I don't know if it's been as palpable. And Nvidia very much seems to be the one true bet in the space.
Mm. Mm.
I don't think that can last. Microsoft already announced they were developing their own AI chips. AMD have popped their head up
Mm.
as well. So
Mm.
while the tailwinds for the business there are going to remain, and the business
Yeah.
is going to go from strength to strength, I think the stock itself will take a bit of a reset. We'll say its valuation will come down. It won't be seen as that pure play anymore, and
Yeah.
yeah, it'll suffer as a result. But not to say that it's not a great business and that it won't do well in the future, because I think it absolutely will. We've seen from this quarter
Yeah.
alone, but that
Yeah.
it's just become too hypey. And then
Yeah.
basically for the exact same reasons, I'm going to throw Novo Nordisk in as well. And this is just because
Mm.
I only got to the ends in Yahoo Finance when I was researching this question.
So the
But
maker of the panacea, is it Wegovy or Ozempic is theirs? Which one?
both
Oh, Novo Nordisk has both.
Wegovy and Ozempic is Novo Nordisk.
Ozempic. Oh, I thought they were competing companies. Smaldehyde or something is the name of the chemical compound. Go on, tell me.
Yeah, it's GL1. Is that the
Yeah.
yeah GL1?
Yeah.
And for the exact same reasons, basically. I think there are those tailwinds there, and this business will continue to do well. It has
Mm.
the market leader in what for many people see is this just new must-have drug.
Mm.
Uh, but for the exact same reasons, I think it won't be seen as a pure play for much longer. Eli Lilly has already brought out and it's not because you remember Ozempic is still seen as a diabetes drug.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, Eli Lilly has specifically brought out a weight loss drug that has just been approved by the FDA, and
Oh.
if that comes to the fore, we'll see that Novo Nordisk didn't have the same kind of patent protection and complete monopolistic power that
Mm.
investors probably saw. So similar to Nvidia, I think the business will still do quite well, and the tailwinds will remain. That weight loss, the momentum there for that weight loss drug is huge. We've seen it, like
Mm.
McDonald's and Coke are losing billions of market share because of the word Ozempic being thrown around, and a couple of investment analysts kind of trying to sound smart for big long term trends. But I think it'll become a much more competitive space, and I think if you miss the rally, I wouldn't go chasing it now. So those two could very much make me sound very foolish, and they could be the two biggest companies in the world next year, and the Danish
Mm.
krona could be the most
Mm.
valuable currency in the world. But yeah, I personally wouldn't go chasing them. I think the hype is very much real, and I
Yeah.
think it'll subside eventually. Maybe not
I
next
think
year specifically,
Novo
but
Nordisk is now the most valuable European company, isn't that right?
it could be. Yeah, I believe it.
I, I think it is. But do you know, I just slightly off topic, but do you know anybody who's on either of those drugs? Or do you know, has anyone declared to you that they're on one, either Ozempic or Wegovy?
No, I don't think it would be a very Irish thing to start announcing that to people, would it?
Mm. Yeah. No, I mean, it really is being hailed as a panacea. I've read reports about it stops biting nails and it reduces OCD and it's like, what does it not cure? But
Yeah,
what does it do to the human body over the long term?
absolutely. And that's the thing. This isn't really tested at all. You know, if this is whatever it is, a daily or weekly injection, constant exposure to this specific drug, how does that play out in the long term? So that's another concern you could have with it. I'm not thinking that far out. I just think that there will be competitors, and I think the space will get a bit busier now, as
Mm,
it always
yeah.
tends to do. What's the
Yeah.
term? Your margin is my opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it seems to be quite. I know if you've struggled with weight your entire life and you just feel broken by it, and there's nothing more you believe you can do. You've tried diets and excuse me, you've tried special exercise plans. This injection certainly would be very appealing. But then when you think about taking injection once a week for the rest of your life, that makes you feel nauseous. It's not the most pleasant journey, but it's probably seen as the better of two routes. Yeah, I'm keen to see how this story plays out, the Ozempic story plays out, because if it doesn't have long-term negative side effects, or if the negatives are way smaller than the positives, yeah, we could be on a long-term, a secular bull with this particular investment, but I don't know enough about it and I'm not interested in it.
Yeah, yeah. I've been thinking along the same lines. Right.
Mm.
I just finish up there now. I think that was an enjoyable episode. I hope everyone did enjoy, and thanks for tuning in. But before we finish up, I just want to give a quick word from our friends at Vodafone Business. They've recently launched their VHub digital advisory service, offering Irish businesses of all sizes free one-to-one digital support and advice. You don't even have to be a Vodafone Business customer to avail of this service. So just search Vodafone VHub to book a call with one of the VHub digital experts, and we will leave a link in the show notes for today's episode. Emmet, thanks for joining me. And remember, everyone, if you have any questions you'd like answered or elevator pitches you'd like us to tackle, make sure to get in touch. You can find us on Twitter at MyWallStHQ, on TikTok at MyWallSt, or simply just email us at pod@MyWallSt.com. If you're enjoying the show, make sure to tell your friends about us, and don't forget to leave a review on whatever podcast platform you listen to us on. Thanks for joining us today, and we will talk to you next week. I just want to give a quick word from our friends and sponsors at Vodafone Business. I used to think of Vodafone Business as only a reliable provider of mobile and broadband needs, but they're really stepping up to help Irish businesses grow and flourish in an increasingly digital world. So they now offer a whole array of digital apps, from productivity tools and security solutions to IT support and even website builders. More recently, Vodafone have launched their VHub digital advisory service. With its new service, Irish businesses of all sizes can get free one-to-one digital support and advice tailored to their business by simply booking a call with one of the VHub digital experts on the Vodafone Business website. Search Vodafone VHub for more information.